Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Hope you're well. So I've actually found myself in the weirdest hotel ever. It's managed the very, very amazing task of being both not quite completed while also feeling incredibly run down, which I think is a very tricky line to follow. There's a great swimming pool outside with no water in. So I'm wondering, does that actually count as a swimming pool? Anyway, I'm absolutely fine. I'm here. It's right next to where I have to be for a job interview. So the location is convenient. I don't mind. Anyway, I've written a recent blog post about comparing my practice of psyomatics with Tai Chi Chuan, which I've recently been doing. And I just did an intensive 10-week course in the north in Thailand as well. So it's really given me a chance to think about the similarities and the differences between those two practices. So I'm going to go through my blog post, stop every now and then, and reiterate some of the things that I have noticed. Right, so where are we? So the blog post is called Psy-omatics meets Tai Chi Chuan. Over the past several years, I've devoted much of my research and practice to developing what I've come to call psyomatics, a poetic method of listening to what the body knows and how meaning unfolds through its encounters with the environment. In psyomatics, I treat the body not as a sealed off vessel or a machine of muscles and joints, but as a site of relational inquiry, a perceptual instrument that feels itself into meaning by collaborating with the world. Recently, I've been learning Tai Chi and Qigong and practicing these movements daily. Here is a summary of some of the similarities and differences I've noticed so far between Tai Chi and my own psyomatic positions. Similarities. 1. Both are philosophies of somatic practice. Tai Chi is not simply a sequence of postures, it is a philosophy embodied, Taoism in motion. Psyomatics, similarly, is not a self-help technique or method of stretching. It is a conceptual practice of embodied inquiry. Both interpret movement as thought, posture as worldview, gesture as epistemology. In both, theoretical abstractions are explored through deep investigation of movement within the body and the intellect. Just going to interject there because I think that's quite important to know. I think when I see movement practices of the kind that I'm doing, they are really philosophies in motion. And as much as I would say that that my own practice of psyomatics is like an embodied form of the mesotopian philosophy, which if you read into my blogs, you'll understand what I mean by that, of how meaning making is a sort of an intersection between mind, body and environment. That's the kind of mesotopian logic that underpins psyomatics. So anyway, I think a lot of these movement practices, people don't realize, people look at them and they think, oh, they're just really slow movements, etc. No, they're actually philosophies. They're ways of being. They're almost like kind of ontological ways of accessing epistemological knowledge, which is a very fancy way of saying they're philosophies in motion. It's very, sorry about that. Kind of got lost there for a second. Anyway, back to the blog. 2, both are praxis of mind-body attunement to environment. During Tai Chi, our coach has encouraged us to attend to our surroundings, to feel the movement of breath and breeze as continuous, to sense our bodies in the room not as distractions but as events. Psyomatics likewise revolves around attunement, the ways the body opens to acoustic, tactile and spatial cues from the environment. In both, we feel our way into the world. So the similarities here, like just to interject again, what this basically means is both of these practices are about kind of moving through a philosophy of attending to the world. Basically, I think that's what we're talking about here. Number 3, Both require deep introspection to somatic processes. Whether noticing the shift of weight from heel to toe in Tai Chi or listening to the subtle tensions in the rib cage in psyomatics, both practices call for inward attention. Not an analytical attention, but a felt awareness. In psyomatics, I often ask, what emotion or language does the body want to produce in this moment? In Tai Chi, the question is more, how does the movement flow through me? Yet both move through this same domain of embodied introspection. Just to interject there, what that just basically means is getting really inside and knowing exactly how your body moves. You may have noticed people move very slowly in Tai Chi. Well, what they're doing is they're literally shifting the weight around different parts of the body and getting to see how that feels. All right. Number 4, back to the blog. Both require grounding, although there are subtle differences here. In Tai Chi, grounding involves drawing energy upward from the ground. The earth is a resource of Qi, a reservoir of subtle force. In psyomatics, the ground is not a battery or an energy source. The contact between body and soil or floor becomes an exchange, a site of meaning-making, almost conversational. In psyomatics, I encounter the ground as an interlocutor rather than a source of power. So what I mean by that, just to interject, is both of them very strongly centered around kind of contact with the earth as well, both Tai Chi and psyomatics. Whereas Tai Chi sees this as a source of energy, psyomatics sees it as a source of conversation or dialogue. Differences. The most important divergences I have found emerge from metaphysics, from the different assumptions about what the world is. 1. Tai Chi emerges from a Taoist metaphysics of energy, whereas psyomatics engages with substances and flows. In Tai Chi, everything is energy and flux. Yin and yang exchange endlessly. Movement arises from the circulation of Qi. In psyomatics, I do not encounter a world of things that are solely composed of invisible energy. I encounter textures, pressures, acoustic reverberations, material resistance, physiological intensities. In short, I encounter a world of both substances and flows. These differing metaphysical frameworks shape the practice in fundamental ways. Tai Chi moves like liquid through an interconnected whole, whereas psyomatics moves like a body negotiating encounters with other things. This fundamental difference requires further contemplation. I'm just going to interject here because I think this is a really important point, something that I've discovered here that I think is well worth opening up. Does our metaphysical understanding of the world dictate how we move through the world, right? That's a fundamental question that I'm trying to address with a lot of my research. If I see a world of matter and energy, do I move in a particular way and respond to it in a certain way? Whereas if, as the Taoists believe, and also, by the way, many contemporary philosophical approaches see the world as kind of flux and flow and energy, and it comes from, there's a lot of Deleuze and Guattari I'm noticing in many of these ideas from Tai Chi. So I'm going to have to do more work on this. I think this definitely deserves more research. Anyway, back to the blog. Difference number 2. Tai Chi encourages the mind to lead the body, whereas in psyomatics, sometimes the body leads the mind. In Tai Chi, my coach has often repeated, the mind leads the Qi and the Qi leads the body. The intention precedes the gesture. In psyomatics, I often find that the body responds before intention forms. A shoulder tightens, a hip withdraws, a hand reaches, and only afterwards does the mind grasp the meaning. The body becomes an author of thought rather than merely its medium. I'm just going to interject there as well, because I think that's quite an important point that I've come to notice. Definitely with Tai Chi, it's all about thought first. Chi or energy can be led according to Tai Chi, and your intention is to lead the energy where it flows, right? It cannot be forced, but it can be led. So that is all about mind over matter, which I don't encounter throughout my research. And I think that's why psyomatics has come about. I think that sometimes the body responds to the environment without the psyche having any knowledge of this. Like, it's almost like ontology precedes epistemology, which is a controversial statement to make. For many reasons, but I have to think through this a bit more, because like I said, this is all very new. So this is just a blog. I'm putting ideas out here, but I'm definitely going to follow these up as I continue my research. Number 3 difference. 3, Tai Chi relies on visualization and imagination, whereas psyomatics resists oculocentric vocabulary. In Qigong, we trace points of energy, imagine roots descending from our feet, and visualize streams of qi entering our bone marrow. Psyomatics avoids these visual metaphors because they privilege sight over other senses. I argue that so much bodywork eludes sight. Instead, I turn to acoustics, resonance, rhythm, reverberation, to tactile sensation, proprioception, density and vibration. Meaning is not simply seen, but felt. And I think that's an important point, really, to reiterate here. In my thesis, I found it very difficult to talk about thought processes without invoking the language of eye work. Particularly when you're trying to think like mesotopian logic is in the present, right? So we're trying to attend to the present. We're not thinking about future or past events. So we're not throwing forward or throwing back. And I think whenever you think of these different spatial or temporal dimensions, which I would consider are internal constructions of the object itself, I don't think they're external things. I don't encounter them as such. So I definitely think trying to find a language that doesn't prioritize sight work is actually quite important, which is one of the reasons I do the practice of clues, where I try to start my encounter with an environment with the ear as opposed to the eye, because I want to see how it sounds before how it looks. Do you see what I mean? So I'm trying to decenter this oculocentric worldview, this eye worldview, because I think that kind of creates a false impression of what the world actually is. I think quite often we're deluded by our eyesight, none so more than this visual kind of internet medium that we are in these days. Anyway, back to the blog. Sorry, I'm getting off topic, but I find this incredibly interesting, and I hope to do much more work on this. So anyway, back to the blog. Number 4, some New Age adaptations of Eastern philosophy emphasize self-improvement, whereas psyomatics acknowledges multiple vectors of causation. I've noticed a tendency in some versions of Tai Chi teaching to emphasize personal enlightenment, self-realization, inner peace. While these are valuable pursuits, they can imply a passive stance towards the world, the belief that one should accept things as they are, retreat inward, and cultivate serenity. Psyomatics, by contrast, views the human as a causal actor among many. The body does not merely adapt to the world, it helps shape it. Somatic practice becomes an act of participation, not withdrawal. I think that's quite an important point that I'm noticing as well. It's really interesting by doing another practice like Tai Chi and learning how that functions and how that works, and to literally compare and contrast my practice besides it, really helping me define clearly exactly what my practice is and isn't. And I think that's actually quite a useful thing to go through here. So what I'm basically saying in that is, this gets into many other things. I think psyomatics is not a new age practice. I don't think that that's what I'm doing at all. And what I mean by new age is the kind of the stuff that's coming out of California, really, in the sort of postmodern era, these kind of grabbing different things from kind of exotic Oriental Eastern philosophies and turning them into kind of Terence McKenna style philosophical worldviews on flux and flow, etc. I don't think I'm doing that. In fact, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking from yoga or Tai Chi anything really. I'm not imposing anything on it either. What I would suggest that what I'm doing is I'm seeing myself within the environment, my relationship to the environment, not as I don't encounter flux and flows and energy flows and those kind of things. I encounter real things, substances and flows, and I'm trying to respond to those and see how those work in combining for communicative events. I think it's a very different thing here. It's not about retreating into kind of meditative states and withdrawing from the world. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm actively participating in the world around me and using this practice as a way to just another way of being in the world. And I think that that's important to hang on to. Anyway, I'll go into that in more depth later on. Closing thoughts. Overall, I genuinely enjoy Tai Chi and I continue to learn from it, not just physically, but philosophically. I'm always aware that I may have misunderstood or oversimplified some aspects of its metaphysics, and I remain open to correction from more experienced practitioners. I'm learning new dimensions of bodily awareness through Tai Chi and Qigong, but for understanding the poetic process at the heart of psyomatics, I encounter a very different world. Perhaps that is the core discovery from my encounter with Tai Chi and Qigong. Different movement practices require different metaphysical assumptions. Rather than seeking a single correct account of the body and its movements, I'm learning to hold these differing frameworks gently, letting each illuminate differing contours of embodied experience. As always, Miath Ka. So I think my research is taking a really interesting tour, and I'd like to continue doing some more experiments into this. I'd even like to perhaps do like a yoga retreat and see how some of that practice works, and compare and contrast. I think it's really interesting just to see like different practices and see where mine sits in between those. Like I said, I'm going to do some more work later on where I really set out why I don't think a lot of these new age philosophies that come out of the sort of California or Utah, United States kind of postmodern eras are that helpful when it comes to thinking about somatic practices. Anyway, that's a digression. I hope you have a lovely day. I've got a job interview and I hope it goes really well because it means I'm going to relocate to this part of the world full time. Anyway, I look forward to speaking to you again. Lots of love. Bye.